you get a rapper who's popping SoundCloud, you just throw him out on stage with, you know, some red tennis shoes and a gold chain, and you know what I'm saying, you got to sell 1 million records. You know what I'm saying? There's not a whole lot you got to do for that.
Hey, Jay Moore, that's the starter kit. Some red shoes and a gold chain.
And some face tattoos, and you might have the new star of the month. You know what I'm saying?
You know what the problem is? See, this is the problem. Back in the day, would start a group and earn their way to be that solo artist. You know what I'm saying? When you think about even like back in the day before our time, when you talking about like Pendergrass, you know, he was in a group before he went solo. Richie was in a group before he went solo.
But why do you think they were in groups before they went solo?
Bobby Brown was in a group before he went solo.
James Brown.
Did you hear that question? Did you hear that question?
Say that again.
So why do you think people were in groups before they went solo?
I think it's a mixture of a few different things. I think back then they understood the dichotomy of making an actual thing work with different moving pieces, and they knew there has to be somebody that's in the forefront of the group, of course.
Yeah,
but they were willing to, you know what I'm saying, ride that train for as long as they could, and then kind of go their separate ways. Whereas now, people don't want to put in that work with a group of people. I think just want to go out and try to get it all on their own. Whereas some people just aren't lead singers, and they actually need a group in order for them to make it.
That's financially now. There's so much bread in music now. I don't think a lot of people want to chop the pie up. I think a lot of people just want to be.
That too is being greedy and not realizing that you're not the star. You know what I'm saying? You got to get in where you fit in.
Yeah. Yeah. We had that conversation when we were talking about TDE and we were talking about who went first and, you know, all that type of stuff. Like now, I don't think today's era, I don't know if people truly understand the concept of playing their position. It's kind of like, yo, I got XYZ following me on YouTube. Give me some red shoes and a chain. God damn it, and put me out here.
Got a red shoe.
You know what I mean?
I don't think artists could do that in those eras. I don't think you could just see a Michael Jackson or you could just see these solo artists without their groups popping, because that's just kind of how everything was structured. Everything was structured to build up your team, and then you could branch out. White. There's always exceptions to the rule, right? There's always exceptions to the rule. But there are far more artists that became bigger like after they were a part of a band.
You think about
I think we're all right on that one. I'm with him on that one.
Think about everybody on Motown. I mean, they were really Marvin Gaye was kind of an exception because everyone else can't, you know, Smokey came out.
He was Dolo. Stevie was Dolo.
You know, I mean, all the Temptations from the original era, you know, they all wound up doing solo records, you know, Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Marvelettes, you know, the Isley Brothers, you know, the Gap Band, you know, and also it was a big thing back in the day to have a band. You had to have, you weren't guaranteed to have, you know, someone who session musicians. You had to have people who knew how to play instruments around you, at least have a bass player or a drummer. And then you filled in the rest of the parts, you know.
Think about that.
Situation where like, we got you. These record companies don't have the patience or the wherewithal to even try to manage five personalities. Oh no, that's not. We don't feel like doing that much work. Not for
there's no artist development.
Yeah.
To your point,
you have to show up a damn near finished product. Like if New Edition were to come out now, they would have to They would have to have Mr. Telephone Man and If It Isn't Love. They'd have to have those already in the tuck, and you know, they'd already have to have shoot videos and have all that stuff done before a record company would even be interested.
Yeah,
who wants to spend that much time? Go ahead, Long.
I was just gonna say think about even the Wu-Tang Clan, right? They had kind of individual success here and there in New York, right? But it wasn't until they kind of came together and formed as like one huge thing and kind of like attacked everything from one angle. I mean, from the independent side of things.
Right.
It's like I'm just saying, like, we do see that still these days. Like we see it with Odd Future. We saw it with the ASAP crew. We saw it with Griselda. We've seen it with TDE a little bit. You know, we've also seen it with Brockhampton. I'm curious to see what comes out of those young kids.
It's kind of packaged a little differently with those groups though, because even like with Griselda, never came out with just Griselda from the beginning. It was always either Conway,
Benny,
or my guy's name.
Right. I'd agree with
Side
that.
Gun.
Solo,
Well,
but
yeah,
then they would just have a feature.
crew, but not
It's
really.
West
a
Side Gun
group.
first.
They would just be featured on each other's projects. So, whereas back in the day, it actually would just start out as a group, then venture on to something else. So, I get your point though, as far as what you mean by things were structured back in the day were pretty much set to be groups were the popular thing. It was popular to have a whole group come out and somebody to kind of emerge from the back,
bands
to the forefront. Yeah, bands. Even with today, I mean, I don't think people even have the same passion to even want to learn how to play instruments to be a band. I'm saying collectively.
I don't even
and
think
that's not saying that musicians don't exist. It's just that saying that like there's not a neighborhood full of kids that all are learning how to play different instruments and come together and make a band. You know what I'm saying?
I don't even think there's a lane for. I don't even think there's a lane from a consumer standpoint for that anyway. Like, I don't even think people's attention span and attention to, I don't want to say detail, but how people consume music now, like everything is so fast. Like, I don't even know if people can be still long enough to listen to, a band. Like Silk Sonic just makes extremely dope music, and they have two huge artists that got together on some Voltron type shit. But I don't know if there's a lane from a consumer standpoint or 3 or 4 more of those. Like, what
I think so.
I think it is. I think
it
it
is. No, absolutely.
I just other genres.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. It's just the genre. If we're talking about specifically like rap with bands, then you don't see a lot of that. But but like in general, I mean, there still are rock bands. You know what I mean? There still are like bands and stuff like that. I think the issue that people run into is just maybe it's the patience that you guys mentioned, but maybe it's also the fact that again, like you said, like it's so much easier to do everything yourself. Like back in the day, it was a lot more difficult to record an entire album where you played all of the instruments. Nowadays you can do everything. So I think technology has changed it too. I think all of the things we're talking about, like maybe probably contribute to it, but I think theirs are just different.
Yeah, like that's. I mean, everybody makes good. You all make valid points, man. It's like, every Motown documentary, they highlight them in the garage with all the musicians. Like that was a necessity for all of those groups. They had to rock out and jam for. If you didn't have them, you had to go find a player to replace one before we could cut this next record. You know what I'm saying? Like
Otis had to come to grips. Didn't nobody come to see him.
Yo, you see how David Ruffin he played him at the 𝐀𝐄𝐲. If y'all watched the movie, when he came out with the spotlight, it was like, I'm David Ruffin and these are the Temptations. Like that's already he already telling y'all it's about me. Like I'm out of here.
Stuck me in on that scene right there, Jack. David Ruffin was the founder of the group. He had to realize his position in the group that he founded.
I thought Otis founded the group.
No, Otis.
That's what I meant. Otis. That's what I meant.
Yeah, but Otis was like, "Nah, we had this other dude sing lead."
Yeah,
and we're gonna get this cold dude named Melvin the same bass, and then I'm gonna get this kid. I'm gonna get this guy Eddie Kendricks. He cold, and I'm just gonna lay in the cut and make sure the business right.
What? He art the shit out of that group.
Facts.
You know what?
And Otis is still out here. He'll grab somebody and be like, "Hey man, you want to be in the Temptations? We going on tour," and they'll get out there and get it.
Temptations still out here moving with Otis being the only surviving member.
Facts.
Teams, well-oiled teams in general. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Yeah. Any genre, anything that happens, well-oiled teams will always be successful. When people know how to play their roles and know how to step out of the way and let certain people strive in certain situations, whether we're talking business or music or sports, you can't beat them. Can't beat that.
You drop game right there because, the ability to fall back. That's a lost art, man. Everybody can't fall back or know when to lead or accept being able to fall back for a minute until your time comes.
If you've enjoyed this segment of the New Old Heads podcast, make sure to join our live show every Tuesday from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/newoldheads. And we invite you to join our hip hop community on Discord. Access it by going to newoldheads.com/community for talks on hip hop, sports, music, news, and everything else.